Okay, and we are here with Kay Ambriz. She's running for Rent Control Board. Kay, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about your background and how you came to run for this office?
Sure. So my name is Ambriz. I moved to Santa Monica in 2015. I've been living in the Pico neighborhood since then in a rent-controlled unit. Previous to that, most of my background has been in the Inland Empire, San Bernardino County. I grew up there in various neighborhoods, and then I lived in Los Angeles. I went to school at Occidental, and then went to law school in San Francisco, UC Hastings, where I lived in the Tenderloin unit, or Tenderloin neighborhood, which was very interesting. And then right from there, I moved to uh, Santa Monica.
Great. And so that's how you got to Santa Monica. What's your interest in the Rent Control Board and why are you running for that office?
Right. So, housing is very personal to me. I think because my family struggled a lot with housing insecurity growing up. Um, when I was younger, um, we experienced homelessness, and it wasn't until high school that my mom was able to get Section 8 housing, and that was so beneficial to us. It created such security for me to be able to know that that was now going to be our home, and things were a lot more stable. And because of that program, I became very interested in knowing about housing issues. So after high school, I found an organization called the Housing Rights Center, where they do a lot of work with housing discrimination. So I interned there. In college, I interned at the Coalition for Economic Survival with Larry Gross. And when I was at UC Hastings, I interned at EDC. Sorry, trying to keep all the names straight. Um, but it's always just been a passion of mine. And in terms of civic life, when I came to Santa Monica, I decided to go for the Social Services Commission. I was appointed to that. I served on that for about 2.5 to 3 years. And now that there's an opening and it seems like a good fit for me to be on the rent board, I think it's really my time. And it fits along my values and passion to be on the rent board. And I think it's really going to be a good fit.
Awesome. Well, looking forward to hearing from you about it. And I wanted to ask you about Justice for Renters campaign, the Justice for Renters Act. I know that you're supportive of it, and I know because we've been at the same text bank together, texting voters about it. I wanted to see what, your opinion about it as a potential rent control board member if Justice for Renters passes on the same ballot that you are elected to the rent control board on, what kind of changes to the rent control charter would you like to pursue in Santa Monica?
Right. So first, I think we need to hear a lot of input from the community. Um, but in general, I think that 1979 is too late to have rent control be the start. I think we need to see buildings that are much newer be added to rent control. Buildings from the 80s, 90s, and maybe even the 2000s. I think that landlords have even said that they can make a fair return on buildings, even if they were built at that stage. So I think adding in buildings that are newer would just be a start, and incorporating just more buildings and adding that to rent control.
Great. Sounds good. Okay, let's go to Sam.
Hey, Kay.
Hi.
So what inspired you to not take donations from police or law enforcement unions?
Oh, okay. Well, I just would not want to take any money from any individuals that don't have values that don't align with my own. That could include police unions, fossil fuel. I mean, just really, it could be a pack, or it could be even an individual if anyone wanted to donate, but they're values just don't align with mine, then I really just wouldn't accept their money.
Okay, let's go to Lynn.
Hi, Kay. I have to say, I've never met you, but reading your questionnaire, it just really made me feel like you're an amazing person. And I think that the fact that you started as a young child being homeless and then advancing yourself to a law degree and all the work that you've done, I just think you're amazing. And when I also read your questionnaire, I'm a former teacher. So I wrote notes, and I put, wow, A++. I just thought it was so, so good. And I tried to think of some questions, so I looked really hard, and I do have one. It has to do, let's see, with your top issue, which is renter education. You said your top issue is renter education. And so you said, as I've seen firsthand as a SMER hotliner, many residents are ill-informed about their rights. And can you just name briefly a couple of the rights renters have that they usually are unaware of?
Sure. So yes, I am a hotliner with SMER. So what that means is every, I don't know, month and a half or so, I take about a 2-week shift. So anyone who calls in calls the hotline and I call them back. That could be between 1 to sometimes 15 calls a day. It's usually not that much. Some of the things that people are ill informed about. Actually, some people don't even know that they're under rent control. Some people don't even know what rent control is. Surprisingly, yes.
Yeah.
I've also seen a lot of scams. Sometimes people call in because they're in the process of getting a unit or trying to secure housing in Santa Monica, but they're dealing with someone who is really just taking their money. It's like one of those Craigslist scam situations. So, I mean, it really varies between people who sort of know what their rights are. They know that they're under rent control. They know that they have rights, and people who don't even know that they're under rent control. I think that as part of my top issues, yes, it is renter education. I'd like to be most informed myself so that I could distribute education. And then also, I think it's important that that we are able to distribute that information in as many languages as possible. And that means both English and Spanish on the website, but many other languages. We have so many various communities in our city, and being able to read the law and not just the charter, but easily digestible information in one's own native tongue is so important, I think. So I think that's going to be a top issue of mine.
Great. I'm so glad you said that because I feel that's a real need. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Let's go to Isabel.
Okay, so my question may overlap with what Lynn asked, but if there's something new to say about it, because I did notice there was a theme in some of your experiences which had to do to outreach to renters. The Housing Rights Center, you worked as an intern taking calls at SMER, you were a hotliner, so you've had a lot of personal interaction with renters going through various situations. How has this helped you and prepared you for what you could do on the rent board?
I think just being able to put myself in someone else's shoes, knowing what it, well, my last experience at the Eviction Defense Collaborative in San Francisco, it was mostly dealing with people who were faced with 3-day notices, people who are really on the cusp of being evicted. Seeing the anxiety and the struggle there. Also, I think so being able to put myself in one's shoes and also I think in that situation, being able to understand that a lot of us in Santa Monica could be faced with the same issue. I mean, most of us are just a couple of paychecks away from being in that position. I mean, it's not that many of us who have reserves, who have savings, where, you know, like with COVID, if you needed to pay back rent for a couple of months, or you you lost your job for a couple of months, you might be in the same position. So I think in that situation, I really felt for those individuals, and I really saw myself in that position as an adult.
Thanks.
Natalia.
Hi, Kay. Nice to see you. I really enjoyed reading through your questionnaire, and I especially appreciated your response to the question about what the biggest challenges are to keeping tenants in their homes in Santa Monica. Specifically, the point about existing owners not keeping up with maintenance, just because that's a very personal issue that I've had experience with. And you noted that these threats would be addressed by strengthening rent control law, having renter-friendly city, and the more education to tenants about their rights. I was wondering if you could expand about how you would want to strengthen rent control law to address this issue.
Right. Well, I think especially this year, we have the great opportunity of having the Justice for Renters Act on the ballot. So that would be number one. We're hoping that it'll pass, and if it doesn't, then we'll do it again. So that would be number one, to expanding rent control law. It is something that needs to be put to the voters. We can't just, as the board, change the law. And then, and like I said, number two is just education. The more informed an individual is, and sometimes it's not just one person, it's a person and their whole building that becomes informed and then is able to collectively address their landlord and stand up for their rights. I think that one would be changes to the rent control law, substantively, like the Justice for Renters Act. And number two is just, again, more renter education, both to the individual and then expanding that to buildings and getting people to advocate and organize. There we go.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Keith.
Hi there, Kay.
Hi.
It's good to see you. And I'll echo other folks' description of your responses in the questionnaire. Do appreciate you being thorough and mindful with those responses. So thanks for that. One of the things that I'm curious about is education is clearly really important. One of the other things is financial support, when perhaps maybe the education might not be there for folks in a sense. And that is that in light of tight municipal budgets, and clearly the POD program, the Preserving Our Dignity program with the city is a very valued program. Do you have any ideas about how we could perhaps increase support and funding for that kind of a policy solution? Whether it be with new collaborative partners like AARP Are there celebrities or whatever, some other kind of a fund that could be there for that? Could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So I think POD is great. Um, and I don't want to misspeak here, but to my understanding, I believe that we are actively searching for more individuals to fit the criteria for POD, and that there's reserves, because there's not enough people that fit the small criteria as it exists right now. So the criteria needs to be expanded. So I guess addressing your question would be, we should expand the criteria for POD. The income requirements or whatever it might be, so that more people can qualify. In terms of, and then if to expand further the program, of course, we should search for more funding. I think that more people should qualify. And I don't know what that would look like in terms of who we would reach out to for that. But for now, I think the main issue is getting as many people who already qualify into the program, and then making sure that the reserves are completely used. And if not, expanding the criteria so that it is used.
And real quickly, in your kind of deep history of housing rights activism, do you kind of recall the kind of depth of AARP placement, perhaps, in some of those instances?
AARP. I don't know.
Yeah. This being
I'm sorry.
the preeminent elderly people's lobbying group nationally,
Yeah,
I would hope that they would perhaps be more engaged on a local level in that way, national and local level. So.
right. Yeah. No, I'd be lying if I try to make up a response. I know it's a great organization. I know my mom's a member. She gets certain discounts here and there, but I guess I just don't have a direct answer to that right now.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Yep, there they go. Mike, you're up.
Just on that, we'll be talking, or I think we already have, to our city council candidates, because there actually is funding in GS. 30% of that money is supposed to go to rent subsidy programs in the city. And now we have to get the council to actually spend that money and also not divert the existing GS money. But that's for a different set of candidates. My question for you is, so justice for renters, we all agree, or I think this club is, since it's endorsed it many times, agrees that that's a good thing. What do you see yourself doing during this election cycle to get the voters of Santa Monica and beyond to actually vote for it so that it has a chance of passing?
For Justice for Renters Act?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm obviously very much in support of it. I've been text banking, posting a bit on my personal Instagram, telling people about it. That's, I think word of mouth is important. And yeah, I think just the more people know, the better. You know, if people just see something on the ballot, sometimes if they don't know anything about it, they just leave it off. Now, I don't know about it. I don't know who this judge is. I don't know who this person is. So I'm just not going to vote either way. But if you even just have one person tell you something about it, then you're able to make some sort of decision. So the more people you're able to reach can make a huge difference.
Sam.
Just expanding on your last response of talking about how you're a Latina and all of that, how will you ensure that there's a diverse perspective in the manner of rent control so that everyone from all language and all cultural background can be heard so that everyone can bask in the wealth?
Sure. So I am Latina. However, Spanish is not my first language. I did grow up with Spanish in my house, but I'm not bilingual. but I very much identify as such. And but Spanish is not the only language. Sometimes I think that when information is printed in multiple languages, it's usually just Spanish. So I mean, that should just be a given anyways, that it's English and Spanish, but there are many other languages in our Santa Monica community that information needs to be printed in. And then also I'd like to say that I think representation is important, as long as the person who's on the dais or board or where it may be is qualified and vetted. That person can play a huge role in representing to other people that, you know, we are a community of various colors and classes and makes and types. And we should see that in our leaders. So I would be very proud to be representative of my community. Trying to get back to the question about printing. Was it about printing materials in different languages?
Yeah, I guess in terms of costs as well, if we're looking at all those materials, all those different languages, as many as we can, how can we balance everything and make sure that there's equity in a reasonable parameters?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, well, first of all, on the internet, it really doesn't take much cost to go from here's the English, here's the Spanish, here's the Aramaic, here's the, you know, different languages. Yes, it might cost the city a translator for those materials, but you know, hospitals do it because it's a basic right to have the information given to you in your language so that you understand, because it's so important at that time. And just like it's important at the hospitals because, you know, that's important information, so is information that has to do with your tenants' rights, because that's the law. And I believe that that is so important that we should be printing information in all the different languages.
Thanks so much.
Kay, I wanted to ask you about 2 years ago, just about now, when the rent control board had proposed how to deal with the inflation issues regarding new rent increases that potentially were going to go up to 6%, and then rent control board came up with a way to do it more fairly. And then at the last second, at 2 o'clock in the morning, the members of the city council had proposed an alternate solution that would have potentially gone up to 6% for some people, and it became a big rallying cry, as you may remember. What were your thoughts about the way that situation went down, and how do you think that the rent control board and city council can work together better for future issues like that to resolve that before it becomes such a big flashpoint crisis?
Right. Well, that was obviously a catastrophe, and thank God it didn't pass. In general, I think that the rent control board is elected to be the knowledgeable body regarding rent control law. And so, you know, city council should consult them before coming up with any last minute new ideas for how to change law. So that was an issue. What else can I say? Yeah, just in general, I think that we should be two working bodies working together, coming up with solutions. If we are the trusted body that deals with rent control on a day-to-day basis, then we should be consulted when it comes to any last minute proposed changes. It was obviously an oversight, or whatever you want to call it. And Didn't happen, so I'll just leave it there.
Great, thanks. Any other questions from anybody? Okay, well, I'll ask you one a bit of a curveball. So I've seen you wearing t-shirts for Linkin Park, Evanescence. So I wanted to know, what is the greatest metal band of all time?
Dream Theater,
Wow, okay. That's a good response.
prog rock. They all
Yeah, of
went to
course. Yeah.
Berkeley School of Music, and they're very technically sound.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. Well, thanks so much for being here, Kay. Appreciate you, and we'll see you on Wednesday for the debate.
Great. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Okay, see ya.
Bye.